Ravin, I've known you for, I think it's 10 years, because 2013, I was working in London at the time in Barclays office, and an opportunity came up for me to come here in Mauritius to do a stint with Ravin in the CEO's office. It was lovely, great experience. And thank you very much for joining us today.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And it's always good to see friends after a long time.
Great.
Thank you.
So the theme for our podcast is happiness at work. I really wanted you to come because I think sharing from the banking sector about the pressures of, jobs, and also how do you keep, staff happy. Do you think that happiness at work is an important theme?
No, absolutely. I think, if I take the big issue, I think there's an issue of talent in the island. There's an issue of talent in different sectors. And banking is not immune from that. There are specific areas where we need people to grow the economy, to grow the bank, to grow the different other pillars of banking. So you need to attract more and more talent from outside, but also to retain the ones you've got on the island. And happiness is part of it. So there's a battle today among the financial institutions for talent, good ones. And happiness is one of them, many more. But to the theme of today, I think, yes, I think it's becoming key, especially with the new generation. I think it's key to make sure that we ensure that we build an environment that people are happy at work. It's a challenging one. And we'll maybe later talk about some of the challenges we have. But to answer your question, yes, I think it's key. I think we do an engagement survey every year at Absa. And, there are many things, recognition and so on. But whether people are happy, people are willing to come back in the morning to work, I think is key to make sure that we get the engagement level required. And that many other things that follow through that. But yes, it's important. It's a challenge for institutions, for companies, to make sure that you keep that level of happiness, but at the same time, the seriousness of purpose to deliver on the objective of the company. Finding that right balance is key, it's important, and it's tricky as well.
But Ravin, should people not come to work? I mean, why should they come to work to have fun?
Yeah. No, and I can see the point you make, but Rishi, we all of us, we spend 8, 9, 10 hours at work. Now, you can't say that's not part of your life, right? That's part and parcel on what we do, what we grew up with. And if you're unhappy, forget if you're happy, but if you're unhappy, then that's not the place you want to be. And that's not what employees also want their people to be unhappy. What do you get out of it? It's difficult. So, yes, people come to work, but we want people to be engaged. We want people to show up vis-a-vis other colleagues, vis-a-vis clients and other people, fully engaged, full of life, they're present in the moment. But if you're unhappy, I'm not sure you get all this. So in the days where I grew up, getting a job was important, staying in a job was important. So you can't complain about whether you're happy or unhappy. It was important to work. But today I think people have got choices. When you have choices, I think whether you're happy or not is key in where you're working. So I think all of us, most of the employers today recognize that. The challenge and the question is, what do you do? What steps do you take to make the place a good place and people to be happy? It's a tough one.
Right.
Banking is very well known for being quite a stressful sector. Like the whole industry is very much marked by long hours and quite high stress. There's a lot at stake in that industry. So in terms of employees potentially facing a burnout or overwork, what do you do to manage that as a CEO? And is it inevitable as part of this industry.
Yeah, I think in Mauritius, let me say that the work which she used to do in London in terms of investment banking and so on, very much not too much involved in that. We're very much a retail and commercial bank. I think the stress level that you see in developed countries where they've got proper investment banking capability and needs, I think it's much more. The deadlines are much more. But having said that, I think the demand of clients today for instant solutions, but also because we're a global business and clients are all over the world and time zones are different. So you would need people working late or at shift and so on. I think you've got different people. Some people manage that better, others not. And it's important for us as employees to see how do we ensure that we create an environment that can help. Now, if you are at the same time working hard, but if you have an environment where people feel there is no transparency, people feel there's no fairness, people feel that there's not enough communication, people feel that they're not being listened to, then you make the problem even worse. So as much as the demand of the work is there, as much as clients are looking for instant service, instant solution, and the competitive nature of the industry is such that if you don't give the right service, people will move today. People are stressed, but we need to make sure that we create an environment to be able to work within that. But can I also tell you that I think work-life balance has become a big theme in many organizations now, including banks. And how do we get that right balance again is key. And we need to find various solutions. And the pandemic helped us to really look differently at things. Working from home was something that was never part of our jargon in the past. I think we could see that we can allow more flexibility to people. I think with that stress, if people have a bit more flexibility, can come late, work late, or go early, come very early, or work from home. And we've developed tools as well for people to, look at the payments here, for example. It's a key one in banking. We managed to do that now, more and more people doing it from home. Now, there are many issues we need to address, confidentiality and so on and so on. But I can tell you that the pandemic has forced us to find solution to work because we couldn't come to office. But I think we can leverage on that to be able now to be a bit more flexible. So, and agree that there are days where people are extremely stressed. There are days during the month where there are deadlines that we can't miss. So it's important as leaders that we at least create an environment. People are happy. People are not, have all the facilities required to deliver on those stressful moments. It's a difficult task. Once again, we don't necessarily get it right all the time, but we should always try to find solution and get it better.
I mean, like you said, banking is challenging, and maybe some sectors within banking are more challenging than others when it comes to deadlines and, the high pressure of needing to meet those targets and the demands of the people, of the clients themselves. But just because you're dealing with money as well, even in a retail bank, it's equally stressful in a way. You've led the bank for a number of years. Even when it was before Absa, it was under the umbrella of Barclays. And of course, now it's Absa. Surely you've adopted a few steps, or you trialed out, you've explored some steps to boost that engagement that you talked about from staff, because you need the staff to be on your side. Can you maybe explore, maybe discuss some of those steps that you've taken, and which ones have worked and which ones haven't quite worked?
No, I think we do this survey every year, and it's interesting to look at the results. Some of the leaders believe it's unfair, we do all this, and then staff have got a different perception. But perception is reality, and it's important that we listen to people. I think that some of the air that comes out loud and every year is recognition. And when I say recognition, not necessarily pay. It's more than that. It's people feel that they're valued, people feel that they've been listened to, and people really think that we value their work, their contribution. Very often, I mean, to your point, Rishi, about people come to work, or people are paid to work. And why should we say thank you? Why should we go out of the way and recognize people? But I think more and more people want that, and more people, human beings in general, want to make sure that they are appreciated. And we've gone for a proper training program, training leaders, training managers, to ensure that we address the issue, we address some of the expectation of the youth, of the young people we employ, and deliver on that. The problem we've had in Mauritius, maybe elsewhere, but at least in Mauritius, very often we've promoted people with technical background, not necessarily people who can lead. You're good at something and you think you can suddenly become a good leader. And our education system as well is one where it encourages academic excellence as opposed to be an all-rounder and to be able to lead people. So as an international company, of course, Barclays and Absa now, we invest a lot in training. We invest a lot in our leaders to ensure that we're leading properly. So many steps have been taken, including building trust in the organization. And that's, in my view, is very key for people to be engaged, for people to believe in what we're doing. Communicating has been important more and more to make sure people understand what we stand for, what are our values, and that we're behaving properly and we're living those values. One thing is having on the board to say, these are the key values, but then do something very, very different. Yeah. And people are smart today. People read a lot today. People know where the world is going. So I think, Rishi, to your point, the challenge has, in my view, has been to live up to expectation of the new generation. People are connected today globally. They know exactly what's happening. And to train the leaders that we have who are technically very sound, but needed to be trained of how to lead, how to motivate people, and how to get people engaged, have been one of the key learnings. Sometimes we expect people to get that quickly, and it's not as quickly as that. So the soft skills is an area that we've invested a lot, and we spend time a lot to ensure that we do. I think in our case, succession planning has been another area where we work very hard, is to ensure that we're looking at the different layers, different bench strengths that we've got, and train people on the gaps that they've got. So there's a lot of work that has happened in terms of identifying people, then going through an assessment to look at their strengths and areas of improvement, either strengthen more that strength, but also working on the areas of improvement. And I think once the work is being done, and the responsibility for those managers then to train their people down, but also to ensure to create the environment for people to be more engaged, more happy, and deliver more. Some people tell me, I might not be engaged, I might not be happy, but when a client is in front of me, I'll give my best. I don't think it works that way. I think your face shows that you're not happy. The client sees that. Yeah. Even when you speak on the phone, people might think, I would know whether there's a happy man or happy woman at the end of that line. So I think a lot of work is happening, and I can tell you that working from an international bank, there is also a pressure on us to ensure that test, that assessment that we do every year counts, for example, in my personal assessment of how well we did or not. So it's in our interest to do it. But beyond that assessment, I think we believe that to have a sustainable organization, having happy employees, engaged employees, motivated employees is key. We won't get it right all the time. You will have people leaving you. You will have others joining you for different reasons. But when people leave because they're not happy, that's an issue. That we have all to be concerned if people leave because they're not happy.
Would you say also there needs to be an element of fun, in the workplace? Back in my days, there used to be golf days and stuff like that, or team building events or whatnot. Do you think that's something that this generation still requires? Does that still contribute to happiness in the workplace?
Absolutely, but the only difference, Rishi, is that we used to do it once a year, team building. So now they want it every day. They want it like it's part of the way we do things,
But you
right?
can't
So
have
it's like
golf every day.
You can't
more
have, but
often-
at the office,
Yeah.
you have to create an environment where it's fun.
Okay.
You can't come to office where it's cold, where nobody's, having a joke, nobody's speaking, everybody's.
Yeah, because you
That's
feel
it.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where the changes that are happening. It's where people say, when I come to work. But that includes things like dress code.
Yep.
In the past, all tied up, all jacket and so on. Now we're allowing, polos, we're allowing Friday casual. As leaders, we also become very casual now so that people can approach us as opposed to, when you see they see you in your suit and they think, can I go and have a conversation with this person? Not necessarily a work conversation, but general conversation. So I think the difference is the environment need to be conducive for people to think, it's less formal as used to be and more casual, fun in a way. So, for example, our canteen is built now in a way that you go there and then it's colorful, it's, kind of thing. We have, happy hour on Fridays to make sure that people join and have a glass of wine. But even where we work, we've created different areas where people can go and relax. It can work in a different kind of environment as opposed to a traditional desk and a chair. So I think, I'm not a big fan of team building exercise once a year. I think it's overrated. I think you expect too much out of a team building day once in a year. I think what it brings, people know each other better and so on. But I think building trust, building an environment where you allow people to make mistakes, you allow people to try new things and to work in a different environment is key. And I think this is where people are looking for. And I can tell you, that doesn't mean that the seriousness of purpose goes away. That doesn't mean the quality of work deteriorates. No, it doesn't. But I think we need to give a bit more flexibility in the way we arrange the workplace.
So talking of flexibility, just before, a few moments ago, you mentioned working from home being something which pre-pandemic we didn't know about it much. And now, even after COVID-19, people in many organizations still prefer to work from home. But more recently, some banks in particular in America, for example, JP Morgan, came out with a memo not so long ago saying, you know what, working from home is no longer acceptable for especially the senior bankers, because we've realized that they need to be on the floor, they need to be dressed, they need to be there for their clients, etc. And so they found out that a lot of people were abusing the system as well, and maybe productivity there had dropped.
Yeah.
This is not quite your experience though, right?
Well, no, I think I agree with some of the things said there. I think we can achieve it differently as well. My view, I think flexibility is important. I think we need to have the flexibility. But some of the concern raised in this particular case, I think are valid. I think if you're a people's manager, I can't imagine you working from home, right? How do you lead people working from home? I see a lot of stuff happening through face-to-face meeting, emotions, discussion. We've all joined, Zoom or Teams, MS Teams. And, a lot of us should agree that when you're not speaking, sometimes you're off, your mind is not here, you're doing something else. And I don't think that helps. I don't think that helps. I think, I believe senior people should be in the office, meeting clients, meeting staff, leading. I think it's key. Do I believe everybody should come back? I don't think so. Do I believe there should be some anchor days? Absolutely. Because, if a week you decide to stay home, work from home, Then the other day I stay home. When do we meet? So there need to be anchor days where everybody's here, so that culture, generation of ideas, and so on happens. But I think flexibility should be given as well. And there are days that you need to prepare a report. Maybe working from home is better from a productivity perspective. From an output quality perspective, is better. So that flex should be given. I think the way we've tried to do it, the general rule is that all senior people should be in the office. But you may decide to stay at home if you think that's important. Okay. So that responsibility is being put on the person to decide. But I think there is also a scope for us to reduce costs through, having less office space, maximizing on, place and get people to work from home if need be. And there are certain areas of the bank, for example, that maybe working from home is much better. You work in risk, for example, you need to look at number of files. Maybe sitting at home is better. But I'm not sure every day. But I agree on the concept that I believe senior leaders should walk the floor, should be meeting clients, should be arranging to see people, should be mentoring, should be coaching. That can't happen through working from home. So yeah, I think the right balance is important. Yeah. But I think more and more we expect senior leaders to be back in the office.
Okay. Many people would say that actually a key to happiness for them would be an increase in pay. So what do you think about that? Does the bank who pays the most to staff get the best staff?
Yeah. Human beings are a creature where, all of us want to get paid a bit more. But I don't think it's the only thing or motivation of why people stay or come to work for a company. But it's important that we remunerate people properly. You can't expect loyalty all the time and not remunerate people. So, for example, we do a market survey every year to see where we pitch compared to the rest, and we want to be seen as an employer that pays at the right level. And very often people are happy what they get, but when they look at the other person's plate and they say, "Oh, I think relatively I'm not well paid." So, but I think fairness is important to make sure that we pay people. I think in our case, ability to pay also is an issue. People believe banks make a lot of money. You look at the Mauritius banking industry, for example. 60% of the returns today, or the top line, come from the global business. And I think in our case, only 20% of the people are employed for that business. The retail business, given the size of the market, you don't make a lot of money, right? Now, how do you remunerate people? If people are looking for more money, because the bank generally is profitable, when the profit comes only from one particular segment, it's difficult. People see the bank is making money, why we're not paid? You look at their own area of where they work, it's not necessarily making money. And in our case, most of the banks in Mauritius, the majority of people are employed in the retail business. And that retail business is not necessarily very profitable. When I say profitable, it might be on amount, but if you look at the returns perspective, from the capital you employ to do that business, it's not very good. The average return in Mauritius of the whole industry is 11%. If you look at the retail business, you don't talk more than 4 to 5%. Now, nobody will tell you 4 to 5% is a good return. And I would say 70 to 75% of the people employed in the banking industry are in that sector. Now, we have to find the right balance. But, and I say, I think generally banking has been an area where the salary has been good. But if we think we can attract, retain, and grow talent only by paying people money, I think we're getting it wrong. And the areas we've spoken today about happiness, about creating an environment where people feel that they are trusted, that they are valued, and we're communicating regularly. We have the right vision. People see what they do every day is contributing to that. But more and more today, different agendas are important. I think what we do for the community, people look at that. The ESG strategy, You know, I was at a town hall on Friday. And very often when you go into town hall, first thing, you don't get many questions. These are changing, getting more questions now. Secondly, the question used to be mainly around financials or plan. You know, what solution we're bringing. You know, there were a number of questions around diversity and inclusion. There were a number of questions around our ESG strategy. And there were a number of questions around, within diversity and inclusion, what are we doing for impaired people, different people. So you could see, this is what employees are looking at. Are they proud to work for your brand? You might get paid well, but if the brand is not a brand that when they go out and say, I work for company A, and they're not proud of that, I think that raises question today, that raises their own question to them whether they're working for the right company or not. So the overall picture is important as well. Salary is important, I shouldn't say otherwise, but a bigger agenda is key as well to achieve that, to be able to be at the forefront of this talent war and to say you're getting the right talent, or you're retaining the right talent.
It's interesting that you say that you're getting questions at town halls, because when I was in London, I remember you'd be like forced to go, like they'd be begging people to attend, and I'd be like, oh, I've got this financial model that I need to finish, and there's always excuses. But it's great to hear that people are interested, genuinely interested in ESG and probably CSR and stuff like that. Because I don't think personally that it's just about being proud of the company that you work for, or the bank, but it's also the fact that if you do something and acts of kindness for others, actually this brings you to a different level of happiness than if it's all about, you know, me or, you know, this person or whatever. Do you not believe that?
Absolutely, no, absolutely. I think, you know, I mean, again, you go back in time when we started our career. I think it was important to bring back a salary home. You know, it was important then. As the world has gone, you know, time has gone by, and I think where the majority of people were in terms of where they stood in terms of income, poverty, and so on has improved. The needs are different now. I think, especially the young guys, the new generation, I think it's key that they believe in your project, they believe in the values that you stand for, they believe that they are really contributing to society, and so on. So if you're not seen as an inclusive entity company, and you don't have a bigger agenda, then you will struggle. And I said salary is part of it. A big name is part of it. But what you're really doing, I think, is key. And I said, you know, when talking about town hall, people asking questions. I think not only question, challenging us. And I'm seeing that more and more. And I think it's good. It's good that people, you know, the employees are pushing us to think differently, to act broadly, and to make sure we are a sustainable company. And that's good in terms of the pressure, if I may put it this way, that is being put on leaders to think differently.
But it's also a reflection of how approachable you are as a leader. What may be led to some people hesitating to ask questions is that, well, am I going to look stupid? Am I going to look like a troublemaker? You know, so it's kind of a bit of a fear factor.
Yeah.
But if you're saying that they're asking questions and challenging you and you're taking it positively, I think that, you know, says something about the environment that they're actually working in.
Yeah. You know, we've talked about the survey we do every year. One of the other areas where it's quite high, it's been high for a long time, is people say there's a fear culture. Generally, fear culture. And it's always difficult to define that. What does that mean? And I ask people, how many people have lost their job because they've spoken out? How many people have been transferred or not promoted because they're seen as troublemakers? They can't come up with at least one. But we also know the society in which we live, the culture in which we live. Some people might find it difficult to ask questions and blame then the fear issue. But I think what we've tried to do, Ishe, is, feedback is something that we're training people on. How to give feedback. Because feedback is important. Now, very often, some of us are very bad at receiving feedback. Some of us are very bad in giving feedback. There's an art around how to say that and how do you receive it. And we're training people on that. When we do assessment every year for each staff, we ask them, we need a 360. And you know what happened typically? They would look at a few friends. And then when the 360 comes in, you look at the person, you think, you're the best thing after sliced bread. And we've pushed people now to say, if in the feedback we get, there's not one area of development, we will discard that feedback. Nobody can be perfect, right? We all can improve. Now, if I know somebody properly to be able to give feedback, I should know some areas of improvement. And this is what we need to train people to look at, as opposed to just, and human creature likes to be loved and to be liked and so on. But all of us can grow by getting feedback. And the way we take it would show whether we've grown as a leader as well. And I think, Rishi, that's what we're trying to build. It's not always really easy to do it, but that's what we're trying to build, is to make sure that we create an environment people can speak in. Now, when you're speaking up, you have to make sure that you are saying the right thing, back it up by the right facts and data, and that's what we're trying to build.
Also in the banking industry, maybe not so much in retail, I'm not so sure about this, but definitely in the investment banking world, there's a lot of clawing to get to the top and a lot of politics involved. How is that in terms of your organization? Is it something that still happens when people feel like they're pitted against each other, or is there now more of a general feel of, if my colleague does better, then we all do better?
Yeah, difficult one. I think you talk about banking, but I would say Mauritius or island mentality is there, right? We're a village, right? So.
It's a small country, so I think if you want to get to the top,
but also in terms of the gossiping and in terms of the rumors and I think most of the companies face that. Most of the companies face that, and then it's also in banking and it's also in Absa. And for us, when you look at the unofficial communication versus the official communication, there's a big gap. And people tend to believe some of the rumors. People tend to believe some of the gossiping. We do a proper assessment every year, and then we do a health check every 6 months to talk about performance of people. So the politics, well, maybe I'm the CEO, I don't see some of them. But I don't believe that politics get involved, at least in our company, around who gets to do more, who gets promoted and so on. But again, sometimes being the CEO, you're on top and you don't know exactly what's happening on the floor. But I can agree on the gossiping, I can agree on the rumors. Sometimes you scratch your head on the wrong day and then whistleblowing goes. I think it's one area where I don't think we've moved far, we've done better, and we've understood some of the mental health issue it might create. I know a lot of people who, there are some things that are said about them, and that have an impact on them. And not necessarily true. More often than not, it's not true. Sometimes somebody creates a story, and then in a few days, that story becomes something very, very different. So I think it's an area where education is important. I think if people read more, people understand each other more, I think you would have less of it. But your question was more around people climbing the ladder within an institution by politics. I don't see that a lot in my company. It may happen elsewhere. But we are more worried about it on the rumor mills it creates. Some people really believe in this. Some people sometimes tell you things that you say, bloody hell, where did they dream about it, So that's more of my concern is the impact it may have on people, as opposed to nepotism or favoritism in terms of promotion and recruitment. I'm less worried about that.
But it is true, though, it is a fact that in companies where compensation is directly linked to performance, which is the case in banking, that some people will do anything to maximize their return or to get that promotion, blaming someone else or highlighting some of the faults in the others to be able to get to the top. And so maybe you don't see it as the CEO, but then is there a way of being able to, bring those things to light, maybe even earlier?
Yeah. So, Ushi, I think having a good scorecard is key. So if you have a lot of those objectives that you can measure, then what you hear doesn't matter, right? If you're quite clear on the objectives, quite clear on the scorecards, quite clear on the weightage, and quite clear on the process of performance management. As an international company, we've gone through that many years,
Yep.
many cycles and so on. So I think we're getting better. And I'm not kind of discounting what you're saying. And maybe I don't see it. But I think the process we put in place today with a lot of consistency check. So today in our company, there is many level of consistency check to see whether, it's not only the line manager looking at the ratings of people and the compensation. It goes for consistency check within their own team. Then it goes to, in our case, to the management team to say, are we clear? Are we right? Are the proper challenge? So if you get the performance management system right, it's difficult to get it right. But in a bank, a lot of them are measurable. Mm-hmm. So you can't, tell stories. The numbers are the numbers, right? As long as you've set the right objectives. I think more and more we're relying on that to ensure that, and you could be a good player. I think the difference people make is an A player and an A performance. An A player will not always have an A performance. But there are A players, and that you have to identify them, grow them, retain them, challenge them more. Mm-hmm. But if somebody is rated, for example, very strong all the time, then you might be setting the objectives wrong. Because all of us, all A players, will have bad years. So, perception comes.
Yep.
But again, if you have a proper performance management system, you could try to address that issue.
Okay. And so going back to what you said regarding some of the leaders that were quite distraught when they heard about things being said about them, and what you said was that a lot of those things were untrue in the first place, but it still does impact the individual. How do you, as a CEO, then go to them and are able to turn around the situation?
Yeah. So it's not only that they are, there's an issue for a week or two for them, and they're not happy, or they feel that they have been unfairly assessed. You also have this unintended consequence in the sense that people then will not want to take difficult decisions. Being popular might be more important than taking the right decision. And that's where I fear more, is because people feel that people might write something about somebody who would want to take a bit of a tougher stance and so on. That's an issue where I'm more worried about. So I think for us, it's making sure that if there is a whistleblower, for example, there's a fair process. People know there will be a fair process. Both the person that's making the whistleblower and the person at the end of it need to ensure that there's a fair process. If there's a fair process, I think people are okay. But we're all, again, human beings, and when people say bad things about us, rightly or wrongly, we get impacted. Fortunately, I think in Mauritius it's more than it should be, and we can see that in the group. The islands, there seems to be a bit more whistleblowing than, but we need to create that space, because I think whistleblower also helps companies to ensure that behaviors, integrity and so on are being adhered to. And you have to give people a way to anonymously raise issues. And this is welcome. We need to make sure that it works. But then if you use that line, that system in a way to hit at colleagues for understanding, that's wrong. And more education is important. Should we stop whistleblowing lines? No, we shouldn't. Actually, we should encourage it more. We should allow people to do it more. But very quickly, we should look at whether this is a proper complaint or not, or this is just mudslinging and just hitting at people. But to your point, Rishi, I think the support we need to provide to people is important as well. Because what you don't want is people to be demotivated and people to be not willing to do the tough things and take the tough decision and become popular. And that's not what is required in any institution.
So Ravin, when I was growing up, I mean, the advice that I got was go to work, be civil to people, to your colleagues, but don't mix your personal life with work life. So don't open up about, your family or whatever, and treat them civilly, but don't make friends with them. But then over time, I've realized that actually you do work with those people, and you do in fact spend most of your life, awake time with those people, and you can't just be robots. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, especially when you're at the top. Is how much can you share? How much can you share? But I believe that what people need to see you as human beings, can't be a robot. You can't be seen as somebody that can't make mistake, that you're not human, that you don't have your own moments of doubt, that there are days that you don't know what to do. I think more and more you open up and people see your real personality, I think people get a bit more connected with you. People can share their own stuff and people see that, I'm working for a human being. I think that's important. I think more and more. Of course, there are lines you need to draw of what you can share, what you can't share. But I am a proponent of people know you better. People know the type of person you are. If they know that, then they might believe in the company better. But again, we haven't talked about culture today, but that's key in how we want a company to be led, how we want people to be connected to the company. Now, if they come and work and go home and they don't know the person who they work for, and I say that to my line managers, say to them, not only they need to know you should know them better. Somebody comes in the morning and doesn't look happy, doesn't look well, and you expect the same output from that person, you might be wrong. You might, if you know that person has got a kid or a son who's not well, you might be a bit more lenient on the person on the day. But if you don't know the person properly, you might think this person has got the wrong attitude, you might think the person is not willing to work, and so on and so on. So knowing our people is important to then understand why things happen. But people knowing us better, I think it's important as well. In them believing, am I working for the right leader? Because as you know, most surveys have said people leave because of who they work for.
Yep.
Why they don't like the person. So I think knowing people well is right. But the question and the challenge is, where do you draw the line? And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But I believe that knowing your employees better, their personal life better, helps. And for them to know you better helps as well.
Yeah, that's very true. I love that you mentioned about being vulnerable so that people can, get to know you. And yeah, that's really important. Actually, one of the most important things in a organization is that if you're going to have a happy workplace, then the CEO, the director needs to be a happy person, and among other markers as well. But what are your thoughts on, you mentioned the island mentality, and there is only a small pool of the top jobs for people.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's the issue you have in a small economy. I think the broader issue I'd like to raise here is, and I'll come to the point. I think it's D&I. I think some people believe there is a glass ceiling, and I'm not talking about a gender issue here. It is, of course, a gender issue, and more building the platform to. But it's broader than that. If you look at number of economies on the island, and you look at who had them, and sometimes you ask question whether there's a proper balance from a diversity perspective. You know, I like this analogy around diversity and inclusion to say that, you know, don't believe just because you are invited to a party, you are included. Maybe. But the question is also are you allowed to choose the song that's going to be played in that party? And you feel more connected. But are you also allowed to dance? You know, invited to a party is one thing, but to be able to then decide on which song will be played, whether you can dance, I think is also important. So we compounded with number of issues. First, it's a small economy, so number of top jobs are limited, and people need to work. So if people could retire to something else in life, easy, you create space. But I think secondly, there is a bit of glass ceiling in many things, and I'm not sure that we've made huge progress from a diversity and inclusion perspective. I'm not sure. I think for us, it's easier in multinationals. You can go and work abroad. Absa, I think more and more now, but less in the past because we're present in Africa. You know, very often Mauritian would say, I'd like to go to London, I'm going to go to Paris, send me to Abidjan, I'm not sure. But I think more and more I see people within my own company are willing to go to Nairobi, are willing to go to Johannesburg, are willing to go to Ghana and to Uganda and to Tanzania. You know, so more and more now. So you've got more flexibility within an international company, more mobility and so on. But for domestic companies, it's difficult. It's tough. But I hope, because if not, we're going to lose some of the good talents. Because if they see there's a glass ceiling, you know, there's only one job, but the person is still 50. When would he retire? What happens, right? But I'm also glad that there are a number of other pillars within the sector's opening. You know, if you look at the banking, in the past, very strong on retail, a bit of commercial. Now it's opening up a lot. So if you look at wealth management is a key area where we need talent, you know, to grow. Custody, you know, if you look at trade finance, you know, there are things that's happening now where you would need talent. Now, the top job might not necessarily be only job. Diversified experience is also key people looking for. So not being in one area for forever, moving across. So I think from a gender perspective, I think I can do at least in my company, in Absa, we're making progress. And you know, again, I'm measured around how much progress we're making in the company, both at the board level, but also at senior management. What platform we're creating. We can't guarantee job people, but what platform we're creating, I think is key. But I think as a country, we need to look at the broader area on diversity and inclusion to ensure that the top companies of the island is a fair reflection of society. And I'm not sure it's the case today.
But at the end of the day, Ravin, and that will be my last question, as a CEO of a large bank, you can't please everybody, you know, even if you want to, because like Shannon said, if let's say there's only one job that's currently available, one opportunity, yes, you can have other jobs, let's say in alternative sectors, but this is the job that they know and they want, and there's 10 people running for that job within your organization, only one of them is going to get it. By default, you're going to be disappointing 9 others. How do you then embrace the situation to ensure that they're still happy and committed and loyal to you?
No, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. You know, if I look at my leadership team, if you look at the average age and you ask the question, how people grow from the 2 or 3 layers down. I think this is where the theme we're talking today is important. If you have that issue, at the same time people are not happy. If at the same time you're not training people enough, if at the same time you're not giving them other opportunities to grow, then it's a mixture of all wrong things that, people would leave you, people will go elsewhere. But actually, I'm not going to come here and say we've got a solution. It's a difficult one. It's important that we identify talent and we give them further challenges. We remunerate them properly. We train them properly. But in our case, within the group, to see if there are things they can do. But you're right. A lot of people have aspirations, and those aspirations aren't necessarily met. But a lot of them also understand where we are, understand that there's only one job, and others might not get it. So if you go and get frustrated about it on things that you can't change, then you're just making yourself unhappy. So I think that's what people are trying to get. And I can tell you it's getting better today than it was 20 years back. I think the notion of happiness, the notion of what I want in life is much more entrenched today than it was 20 years back.
Yeah.
I think in the past, climbing the ladder, being seen in society, to be promoted and to be, was important. I think less and less now. There's still a bit, there's ego as well, part of the whole issue. But I think it's less and less now. And I believe that, and that's one of the key things that we look at in terms of talent management, retaining, attracting and growing talent, giving them challenges of how they can grow further, and finding different ways of keeping them motivated. And I can tell you it's not easy. It's not an easy task. I think it will become tougher in the future as people are more educated, people have more aspiration, people are much more experienced, and like yourself, a lot of Mauritians having worked in international companies in very mature market are looking to come back. Now, if they come back and feel that, very small pond, then that might be issue. So how do you create the diversity and the experience you give them, I think is key.
Right.
Yeah.
Ravin, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom to our listeners and ourselves today. It's been lovely having you.
Well, thank you, Rishi. I think it's a pleasure always to be with friends. But I think it's also, this exercise also gives me a moment to reflect. I think it's sometimes good that you are asked a question and you think, might get that right, or there's something I'm not doing enough to be able to get the right environment for employees. But I said to you, if you look at our job today as CEO, I'm less into banking. ChatGPT can do many things for us. We've got so many technical people. I think in our role, it's about leading. It's about building teams. It's about creating an environment to people to deliver better, productivity and so on. So these are not things that we're taught, fortunately. Of course, when you do your MBAs and so on, you are. But you're growing up, you're not taught those areas around soft skills and so on. And my suggestion to you guys is to look at this whole area around soft skills as people are growing up, or how important it is. I'm not sure in private school and so on it is taught, but I'm not sure it is taught to pass exams. And so the new generation of people we need as employees will be a bit more diversified in terms of the soft skills, in terms of how do I behave in workplace. Given that a lot of them spend a lot of time alone in their room or on their computers, how do you become more social animals is key. And we need to work together as employers and those who provide resources to us, that we know exactly what is required so that we're training people accordingly. But thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we'll take that on. Take that on board. Training in soft skills. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ravin.
No, thank you. Thank you.
The summer